Daniel Cormier came out and he was talking about his match with Stipe. And that's going to be in August, but I mean, I think everybody's looking forward to that one a little bit. That's also not Fight Island. They're going back to the Apex for that. And I share that with you because there was some rumors at one point, whether you heard them or not, but there was rumors going around that they were going to push that fight out and they were going to try to do it in Dallas, Texas, in front of a live crowd. I don't know that that ever had any legs. I'm just bringing it back around for it. It's going to be in Vegas. It's going to be at the Apex. Daniel said, I love fighting at the Apex. Now, maybe he didn't choose his word carefully because he's never fought at the Apex, but he said, I love fighting at the Apex. And then he referenced the cage. He said, I hope Stipe has his wrestling shoes. If you guys think this is going to be a stand-up battle like last time, forget it. Call me the new Curtis Blades, but that old leg's going to be in front of me, and it's going to be single leg, single leg, single leg all night long, end quote. And by the way, when I say quote, end the quote the way that I remember it, okay? I'm paraphrasing, I'm sure, a little bit, but that's what he said. Couple of things there. First off, do we take him at his word? Has Daniel Cormier ever come out in any of his fights and told his opponent ahead of time what he is going to do? And I must tell you, if you're Stipe, who did get out-wrestled in the one and only round where Daniel chose to try to out-wrestle you, you're probably going to have to listen to that. I'm not a big believer in the head games. I'm not a big believer in throwing a guy like Stipe, a world champion, off his tracks with anything. But if anything was going to do it, it's when a guy comes out and tells you his plan. Oh, and by the way, it's a pretty good one. I mean, right, that's the one thing about a plan. When you have to concede as the opponent and go, well, wait a minute. That's actually a really good plan. That would work on me to some degree. That would give me something different to have to deal with. I also thought that it was, so I don't know if it's gamesmanship. I mean, who knows if that's gamesmanship? Who knows if DC's having some fun? Because in all fairness, if you do go look at that fight, the first one you got to throw out. That was just a weird match, and it was even very quick. You look at the second fight, there's parts of that you have to throw out, and then there's parts that you have to cling to for each athlete. Stipe's ability to push the pace, find the body, sure, he's thinking about that again. Daniel Cormier, think about that very first round where he took him down and held him there and did damage. Of course he's got to think about that again. So I do think when he comes out and tells you what he's planning to do, I tend to take him at his word because it's what he should do. Now, did he go a little bit too far with his words by not only declaring that he was going to wrestle, but specifically what he was going to wrestle with? Look, a single leg is a very challenging technique in MMA. Randy Couture had success with it, but he did it differently. He pushed the guy into the fence. He controlled way up in the crotch, controlled those hips. He'd pick guys up and bring them down. You might remember Randy Couture's fight with Gonzaga, but it would be that exact position that really won him the fight. Because as they came down to the mat, Gonzaga's head hit Randy's hit right on top of Gabe's. Randy broke Gabe's nose. It was a headbutt. It was an unintentional, accidental headbutt, but as they went down, their heads collided into the fight. The only guy outside of Randy I've ever seen have success with in the history of MMA with a single leg is Chris Weidman. And the single leg is a very philosophical position in both wrestling and in mixed martial arts, but more prevalent in mixed martial arts. Imagine this, guys. Imagine you have my leg. Just picture that in your head. I'm hopping around on one leg. You've got my leg secured. Both your hands are around it. Your hands are locked. Do you have my leg? Okay, now picture that exact same position, but let me ask you a different question. Do you have my leg, or do I have your hands? Because your hands are now committed to that leg, and I still got one to hop on. So if I'm hopping on one leg, I got two hands free. You got no protection to your face. I mean, a single leg is a very risky move. Chris Weidman could take anybody down with a single. Randy Couture could do it when he pushed you into a fence. I think that Daniel Cormier has that same single. He gets his head to the outside. He pops his hips. He sends you head over tea kettle. He has that explosive ability to do it as well. But if we're to take Daniel at his word, and this might have been one of those rare times where he wasn't thinking the camera was on and he just started spilling the beans, or he's playing a game. We're really never going to know. Even after we watch the fight, we won't know. Maybe he was thinking single leg and just couldn't find it the whole night. I'm just offering for you, if he goes to a pure single, Stipe Miocic, who is nowhere near the decorated wrestler of Daniel Cormier, can make up just between now and mid-August. He can make up a single leg. He can make that defense up, no problem. Doesn't matter if you got a two-time Olympian on your leg or you got a 5-year-old kid that's never wrestled before. You're in the same position, which is hopping around on one good leg. Who gives a damn what's happening to the other leg? Who cares who has the other leg? All you have to do is go into practice, everybody, every day, have somebody grab one leg while you hop on the other. It's not rocket science. At the same time, it's still Daniel Cormier who will transition from that leg to your body, who will transition from that leg to an over-under position, hit inside trips, hit outside knee blocks. Daniel's ability to chain wrestle is going to be the difference in his ability to out-wrestle Stipe. This is not a wrestling match from the Olympic trials in 2004, 2008. It's not a wrestling match from the NCAA tournament in 2001. Chain wrestling is the difference. You will lose your ability to chain wrestle if you do not chain wrestle on a daily basis. It used to be, but I got to go back to the mid-90s, that if you had a good takedown, that was enough to carry you through a mixed martial arts fight. As soon as guys started to learn, as soon as they started to realize, I don't need to learn wrestling defense. I don't even need to learn how to wrestle. I need how to stop one position, which is the double leg. I lose control of my hips. How do I get them back? How do I use an overhook and pull a guy up so he's no longer on my hips? If I can just do that, I don't need the 10 years of wrestling he has. 10 years of wrestling, he worked on 10,000 different holds. I only need one. And that was the difference. If you could chain wrestle, if you could shoot to what we call a reshot. The first shot gets you close, the second shot is what gets you in position, and the third shot is what gets the guy down. Shoot to a reshot to a reshot. You won't need more than 3, but you will also lose that ability to chain wrestle if you don't practice it over time. It is one of the reasons that some of the better wrestlers in the sport don't go out there and wrestle very much. Some of them just can't anymore. Wrestling is not like riding a bike at all, where if you learn it one time, you never forget it. It's not like that at all. Boy, you will forget more than you ever know in wrestling. It's one of those things that just has to be sharp. Now, I can tell you Daniel Cormier for his fight, I'm going way back to John Jones, but I got to see some of that training camp. He even brought in Gatslov, who is one of the best wrestlers of all time, Olympic champion, 5-time world champion, but he wrestled him every single day. Gatslov had won the Olympics the year Daniel got 4th by example. They formed a friendship. Gatslov flew over from Russia, and they went out there and they wrestled. Daniel was very proud of that fact, saying, listen, no opponent will be as good as this guy. I like that conceptually. But when you're dealing with a guy who is so good positionally that you don't get to a lot of your positions, a lot of times you don't even take that shot to get in there because you don't have the feel, you don't have the opening. One of the keys to MMA wrestling, to being a really good MMA wrestler, is to wrestle with somebody far beneath your skill set. Somebody who can offer you just enough resistance that it forces you to take that second shot. It creates a little bit of scramble, but ultimately you come out on top. That is how you get to your positions. Wrestling is one of these very different sports where it takes 3 types of guys to make a champion. Guys that can push you, guys you can whip, and guys who can whip you. But you need all 3. You can't just go in there with a guy that whips you. You can't just go in there with a guy you can push. You also got to have that guy that you can whip, because that's what allows you to get to those positions. Those positions that you're actually going to see that are going to offer resistance and force you to transition. A lot of MMA guys get away from that. And a lot of them get away from it, not because they don't know it in their heart. And I'm not suggesting this is Daniel. I'm making a different statement now. Not because they don't know it in their heart, but to find that right guy. He's usually about 19 to 20 to 21. He's usually in a local junior college, or he's in his freshman year of a Division I. And he's usually going to wear you out. So when you're 35, you're 40, you're the world MMA champion, you're viewed by everybody on the streets as the ultimate, the baddest dude ever. Sometimes it's really hard to go and get a guy fresh out of high school that's going to put one on you under a specific rule set. I have always told people one of the keys that I personally observed to the success of Randy Couture, and Randy Couture wasn't just a multiple-time champion. Randy Couture was a guy that was able to become a world champion at 44 years old, captivate the attention of mainstream athletes like Brett Favre, who was trying to find out, how do I go later in my career? Randy ultimately went to 47, and so many people would ask him how. Not just from a motivational standpoint in keeping current on techniques, how does your body hold up? How do you know how to respond and react at this advanced age? And Randy would always give answers, and I would always sit back and hear him say it, and I would never step in. It was his answer, but I had a different opinion of him. Randy would always work out with the kids, always. He would go into Centennial High School. He would wrestle freshmen through seniors. And he could crush them and he could whip them, but he also was controlled enough to not use his size, not use his strength, find himself in position, stay current on technique, but always have that hustle and that scramble. And he never had to humble himself to go in these rooms to get workouts with guys who are much younger than him, who look at him as a sports hero, who would love a picture with him and love his autograph. He never had to humble himself because he stayed in that atmosphere. I maintain for you that is why he was able to stay so good for so long. He never let that next generation pass him by. He never let that next wave of strategies and techniques eclipse him. He always worked out with the kids. He would do that from 3 to 4:30, and then he would come in and work out with the adults on his MMA. But I always maintained that, and I still do to this day, that was his real key to longevity.